Hello, ladies and gentlemen. There's two new characters coming to the 5-star shop, and we get another free gold companion spirit. So the only question is, which one should you pick, and should you even pick these characters at all? Here's my quick thoughts on the matter, and I feel pretty confident about this since I have both units and use them quite a bit. I'm going to talk about Robin first because I have a whole bag of ammunition for Huohuo's supposed Novaflare that I am way too excited to shoot her with. Anyway, let's get on to the video. First, we have Robin. Robin, for those that forgot, is predominantly an attack buffer that has a high energy cost ultimate. The way she charges her ult is mostly through ally attack frequency, and her ult packs a very powerful team-wide action advance, and most of her buffs are locked behind ultimate state. The ideal situation for Robin is to be on an attack scaling team with good enough attack frequency to offset her energy issues. Robin was one of the best supports during her era, but just like every other unit, including supports, she has felt the brunt of time against her side. Robin is almost reaching 2 years old as a support unit, and her numbers reflect that pretty well. If you count Robin's raw numbers in buffs, she isn't even stronger than Black Swan, who is a DPS unit. She's not even that far ahead of Ashvale, which would be fine right now if Robin also didn't have her energy issues. If Robin cannot fulfill her ultimate needs in time, she loses a huge portion of her kit that many other supports simply do not have an issue with. The greatest comparison for Robin is Tribby, who has more generalist buffs and higher personal damage, while Tribby's energy is much easier to play around with. Specialists like Ceridra are much more heavy-handed in specific buffs, and are also fairly easy to upkeep. But of course, that's just Robin's numeral buffs. It is no surprise that Robin's most unique buff to this day, being her team-wide full action advance, is the reason why she can even perform quite well in the modern era. Assuming you are able to go around Robin's energy issues, through the boss giving you energy, or just the team giving her energy, Robin is actually quite decent despite her age. However, there is another issue with Robin in that the teams that can consistently charge her are not in an ideal position. Fei Xiao's team is the easiest way to charge Robin, but Fei Xiao is not very easy to run nowadays because her numbers are just not that good. Ashvale prefers Tribby, and with Robin can have issues clearing his follow-up attack charges. Aglaya can charge Robin, but Aglaya has her own personal energy problems and struggles without her E1 and Cyrene. Archer has no issues with his own energy, but Robin is only one out of many options that in most situations won't be Archer's best party member. So even if you find a team that can solve Robin's energy issues, whether or not it clears well because of how low her buffs are is another hurdle altogether. But this is the important part. Robin, unlike the units that are better than her like Tribby, is free. And if we take the label of free into her value, Robin is amazing, and nearly as good if not better than the free Ro and Mei for their respective era in the shop release. From the lens of MOC, AS, and Pure Fiction, while the damage checks are much less intensive than Anom, Robin still needs a good amount of team building to make her feel amazing compared to supports you already have. If you are lacking units like Aglaya, Fei Xiao, Ashvale, or Archer, Robin might see less play even in these endgame modes because her energy just feels very clunky. There are ways to abuse her ultimate action advance and allow extreme players without these units, but I would assume you already know what you're doing if you're still able to do that. In Anomaly Arbitration, the selection of teammates for Robin gets tighter due to damage check, making her much more reliant on free energy from bosses to be useful, since DPSs like Fei Xiao may not make the damage cut. But that's really all with E0 Robin. She's pretty nice as a backup tool in case you find her excellent matchups like Lygus. If you already have Robin though, her eidolons are very impactful to her issues as a unit. Robin's E1 is a very straightforward 24% respen, a strong and rare buff for her teams. This is sizable enough that Robin is actually head-to-head with modern supports with her ultimate active, and can clear Anomaly Arbitration shockingly well. One of Robin's issues is that her payoff in Team Amp is simply not worth the energy problems. She will still have energy problems with E1 of course, but when the time arises that you don't have as much energy problems in Robin, Robin E1's payoff is actually worth it. Since Robin's E1 E1 was almost as popular as Tribi E1 back then, it's very likely you'll get her E2 for free because of this new free spirit. In which case, she gives a tiny bit more speed with her E2 and more energy from her talent to make her energy issues much less strict. At E2, you basically solve both of her problems, the amping problem and the energy problem. She actually is now a good generic slot, even in non-attack crit teams just for the turn advance utility, without the team sacrificing much just to bring her. After that, there really is nothing much else left to say about Robin's eidolons. Most of her power is locked behind E1 and E2, which is good news for low-budget players. So is Robin a good selection overall? Yes. Robin at E0 does want you to have a decent roster that can offset her needs to fully use her, and if you have those teams, she's a decent pickup for MOC. If you already have E0, then her early eidolons impact Robin quite a bit, with E1 having surprising performances in even Anomaly Arbitration. E2 drives her flexibility even further in Anomaly Arbitration. The speed boost can be used in Cyrene main DPS teams, and Cyrene's interactions with Robin are quite impressive for a unit her age. And unlike Huohuo, Robin hasn't had a Novaflare yet, so maybe she's a lot sooner to get another update. But really, as long as you understand where Robin can be actually a good character and to what eidolon level she needs to be in for that to happen, then I don't think you'll regret picking her. Anyway, moving on to the next character, Huohuo. Oh boy, Huohuo is a healer. I use that term very generously. Huohuo got a Novaflare this patch, and there is absolutely no competition in saying she got the worst Novaflare of all time. Before I go into Huohuo's issues, let's get one thing straight here. I'm comparing Huohuo to a sustain from almost a year ago, named Hyacinth, and Daniel tldr who was free 6 months ago. I will be very harsh on Huohuo because Daniel proves that free sustain have a decently good power level, and in the other 3 endgame modes, even Lynx can sustain a team. So in essence, Huohuo is quote-unquote fine in a way that she can still work, but completely unacceptable as a Novaflare. I really hope Huohuo's Novaflare is just a one-time thing, because if there's anything like this again and the unit isn't even free, then Novaflares are on a fraud watch list for me. Because if Huohuo is just okay now, then how long is she going to last? This game does not stop for her. And, you know, who knows when her second Novaflare is going to be. But anyway. Huohuo's immense amount of cleansing has always been her calling card, but without damage reduction, HP increase, or attack debuffs in her kit, she tends to die much easier in fights that don't center around debuff. This is quite frankly a very old design that is shared amongst old sustains. They were designed around scenarios more than team comps. Huohuo was meant to counter heavy CC and debuff enemies, and even if you're not using her energy, she's still the best for it. Luocha was good at countering frequent enemy hits, and Fushuan was meant to counter large single target hits. The team buffs for each of these units were simply bonuses. Nowadays, sustains are more about their damage contribution, while their sustain is already implied to be perfect for the team. Hyacinth will only be performing badly sustain-wise if her entire HP archetype itself is countered. Same with Daniel tldr in a hyper carry team outside of Pollock. Even Lingsha, who is a very sketchy sustain, is tuned to Break's already defensive nature with their amounts of delay. That if you do run Lingsha in her specific team, she is safe and pretty reliable. Huohuo, meanwhile, is too easily countered even in her own team. Huohuo's team comps aren't particularly defensive like Lingsha's due to wanting attack and having few defensive utility like delay. Huohuo's sustain being on ultimate use isn't synergistic with her team comp like Aventurine since you want high max energy. And with enemies hitting harder and harder, Huohuo's lack of in-between healing without ally ults is very punishing. That's not even counting Huohuo's team gets one shot because of the lack of damage reduction or HP increase. You can play around Huohuo's sustain with ally ults, but enemy nuke attacks give a fair amount of energy, and it's very crummy to plan your ults for survival around a sustain who's meant to make you stronger through energy gain. So her energy buff is even less impactful than it seems because you're saving it for a high energy nuke. Huohuo's Novaflare doesn't fix these issues at all. She doesn't have any damage reduction or attack debuff. She doesn't have an energy bank or overcap passive, so at least her energy contributions are consistent. And her emergency heal trigger is not generous at all. The only change they gave to her sustain is having one more small tick of healing, and her skill itself heals more. But the issue is that the enemies hit hard enough that the healing in between isn't consistent, so why even do that? It is no coincidence that they are priming Huohuo to be a placeholder elation sustain, endgame, and the enemies hit like a pillow if you use elation on them. This will become very bad once elation enemies stop being the norm, and by the time that elation enemies aren't the norm, Huohuo is already benched by a real elation sustain. Oh, and speaking of which, let's talk about another issue. Huohuo's buffs are way too short. You would think that for a unit that makes Daniel Permansorcerer seem like a Venturine with how bad her sustain is, that at least her buffs would be amazing. Well, no, Huohuo's attack buff is still the same with an extra 24% for characters with high max energy due to her Novaflare. You know which DPSs would like this that isn't Sparksy? Basically only Aglaya, Saber, and the Herta. 2 turns is way too short for Aglaya, and Huohuo isn't impactful enough to suddenly make Herta feel like the AoE queen again. And Saber is Saber. Then you look at other comps that Huohuo works with like DOT, and Huohuo doesn't have enough attack frequency to clear Kafka's charges. And DOT is already squishy enough with a competent sustain like Daniel Permansorcerer. In other hyper teams, they double turn, so the attack buff doesn't last that long. They don't even have enough energy to trigger the extra attack buff, or they use Daniel Permansorcerer instead for attack frequency. It's almost like the devs have not played this unit to see all of her issues. I get that Huohuo is meant to be an elation shield now, but can she at least be more flexible for other teams? This is also another problem with her Novaflare, by the way. They did increase her skill duration, which was one of her main problems, and you know, it sounds good for SP positivity after Novaflare, until you realize that the enemies only keep hitting harder and faster, that the team will almost be dead anyway by the start of their turns, and Huohuo will skill every turn regardless so the team doesn't die. What are we doing here? There really is no reason why her healing tick has to be somehow limited to half HP, and she needs 3 ally turns or ultimates to actually heal everyone back up over 75%. Not even 100%, just over 75%. A good Hyacine doesn't even need to press a button at all, and she still heals the party to over 75%. And that's while having max HP as a buff. I don't want people to leave with the impression that Waveman wanted her to be the Hyacine 2.0, right? She doesn't need to be Hyacine 2.0. But I would expect a sustain that is newly Novaflared to be at least generally comparable at sustaining. I'd even throw out the attack buffs if Huohuo can at least be safer than Daniel Permansorcerer, who himself was also a free unit, so she really has no excuses to be like this. An unreliable support or DPS can at least take an inferior clear like a 2-star. An unreliable sustain brings the entire team down to hell with them. But let's take a step back first, right? Does that mean Huohuo is a brick and there's no situation you should get her? No and no. Huohuo is unreliable, but at the end of the day, she is free. And if you are willing to work for it, she is at least feasible to run. It's only in Anomaly Arbitration where some nukes are too reliant on RNG. But outside of Anomaly Arbitration, Bailu can also sustain. So, you know, take that victory with whatever you want. And while Huohuo isn't going to last very long as an Elation sustain, she at least is one, and it's better to have one for your account than none at all, I guess. I would recommend testing other sustains with Elation first, because the golden companion spirits don't expire, so don't feel pressured. And I guess I could also recommend Huohuo if you're a new account and simply having no sustain banners in sight. Like let's say you've missed the free Daniel Permansorcerer or you didn't pull Hyacine, then I guess Huohuo really is your only choice. Even though she is free, I still am very disappointed with her Novaflare, since it's so easy to fix her issues without making another Hyacine. But I guess this is what we have to work with, right? Like it is what it is. It's so blatantly obvious that she's a sacrificial lamb that at this point I can't even be that angry at it and just kinda accept it for what it is. Huohuo is a unit without a real future, and it makes me sad that the Novaflares are just this bad. So is Huohuo worth it? I don't know, man. What do you think? I would only recommend Huohuo if you miss the free down hang, or you have mono elation and don't mind the fact that she will only be a temporary slot. At E0, Huohuo is, again, quote-unquote fine. Definitely better than Luocha in amping, but if you're looking for just better sustain, E0 Luocha is actually better, and even Bailu might be better. The fact that Luocha has a better chance of getting a Novaflare compared to Huohuo is also just very funny. Huohuo Huohuo is good in the three main endgame modes, while in Anom Arbitration she's more situational. Like, it is what it is. At least her eidolons somewhat fix her kit, but not by much. E1 gives a speed buff and a minor outgoing healing buff, which is kinda meh. E2 gives a Bailu revive, which yes, will happen a bit with Huohuo in Anomaly Arbitration, but if Huohuo is able to trigger this, it's more likely that the enemies are going to do it again and it's not enough. It's more than likely Huohuo wouldn't be able to sustain any further anyway. If you already have Huohuo, I still wouldn't invest in eidolons with this free gold companion spirit when Robin is right behind her. I can actually just boil down this entire segment to, if you don't have Robin at E2, just get Robin and the overall results would be the same. I'm starting to rev up again about this topic, so I guess I'll just say this last thing about Huohuo. I surely hope that Huohuo's Novaflare is only a one-time occurrence and all Novaflares after Huohuo will never stoop to this level. That's just me. I know that some people would love to shoot for Huohuo for some reason. Again, this is just a reminder that balanced units don't stop power creep. Power creep doesn't stop for these units, so I don't know why you would want to bat for this. But anyway, thank you for watching, I guess. I hope you like this final Huohuo rant. I will not be ranting about Huohuo any longer after this video. Then I finally got it out of my system. And yeah, please do the algorithm stuff, and I'll see you guys. Bye.